When somebody asks you a philosophical question, it is a straight away direction into your brain, how you think. Because those questions will be very deep, they will be on life, death, God. And what you answer will totally reflect your personality. And that's why I think my interview was around 20 minutes only. The thing is that some people believe that philosophy will help in ethics and essay, but it goes the other way as well. Sometimes your GS can help you in philosophy, because if you see the GS1 syllabus, the art and culture also is a very important part of Indian schools of philosophy. Once we understand the core philosophy, for example, we understand Vedant, Advait Vedant, if we understand, then it is quite evident that anything that they ask about the Jagat will obviously be some kind of Maya. Yes. So once you understand the core philosophy, you can build your answer, and that's how you will develop that understanding. So I think sticking to smaller resources, concise, to the point resources, revising them multiple times, and practicing answer writing, that is sufficient for this exam. We do not need to go into these cannons of resources. That is not possible also.
So, hello Archit.
Hello sir.
Welcome. So, how it feels to be part of the list?
Sir, feeling is completely unreal, because we have been working so hard for this past 1 year, and to finally get something that you have been really wanting, it's a unexplainable feeling. So very happy.
Let's have some conversation about, let's try to know something about how was your journey very briefly. I would not bother you much about, too much of details.
Yes.
So let's start with your basic background. Like, from where are you from? What is your background as an educational? Did you have any work experience? And how broadly you went through that 2-3 years of your UPSC preparation journey till now?
Yes.
Yes.
Sir, so I come from Pune.
Okay.
And I've been staying there for the past 6 years. And I've had my primary education all over India because of the nature of my father's job. He was an Air Force officer. So after that, when I graduated from engineering from VIT Vellore, I got placed in a company called Hexaware Technologies, where I worked for about 11 months.
Okay.
And during that, this kind of interest started developing in me. Ki I want to do something which is gives me a very diverse work environment.
Yes.
And to aspire for the civil services was but obvious for me that time. So I started looking at online resources. I started looking at the topper talks, and that's how I started getting started with how to give this exam. So in the first attempt, I could not qualify by 2 marks, the prelims exam, and that's when I decided to come to Delhi. And then I've been studying here for the past 1 year, and hopefully this time I've cleared it.
So as you mentioned, some toppers talk help you.
Yes.
So we're hoping that this toppers talk today would help some people.
I'll try my best, sir, to give something
to inspire, to
yes,
guide,
yes.
To at least start thinking about, why should we go?
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
And then how did this philosophy came into picture? Because now we are basically focusing upon your philosophy as optional.
Yes, sir. Sir, the nature of philosophy is such that it helps somebody to think deeper. And since childhood, the atmosphere at my home has been kind of spiritual. Like my mother and my father have both been into spirituality respectively. So also during engineering, when I was in my 3rd year, this interest to kind of read what the philosophers have said and these ideas that we hear about but don't know what they are talking about. So that interest developed in me, and I started taking up to philosophy much before my UPSC journey. So when I saw the list of options that were provided by UPSC, I did not have to think much.
Philosophy was your first love.
Yes,
anyway.
Yes, sir.
So, but then see, if for the benefit of the students who must be listening to us, philosophy as optional have perhaps myths, perhaps some superstitions people have in their mind with respect to philosophy as optional. So one of the most rumored, I would say, conception that people have for the philosophy is it's something very esoteric, something very abstract, and normal person cannot take philosophy as optional and get good marks. What you have to say about that?
Sir, I think it is a big myth, first of all. Philosophy as a subject is deep. It will have its abstract points, but that is also the beauty of it. And if you are a person that likes to think deeply about things, you have to question the things that people take for granted, the purpose of life, these things. If you enjoy doing that, I don't think there is to be any distinction drawn between anybody from any background. They can definitely take philosophy, and for the purpose of UPSC, because at the end of the day, we have to score marks. The syllabus is very well defined. If you have the notes, you have the mentors, you have the teachers, you have the right guidance, there should be absolutely no problem. But you should have some love for philosophy in your heart. That is all that matters.
Okay, so you're basically saying philosophy, if you say that way, considering the system of the UPSC, any optional if you want to go for, you should have some inclination for that.
Definitely.
Otherwise, it's because, sometimes jovially, we to our students say that, choosing optional is almost like a choosing life partner.
Yes.
It's like this, that you cannot change it.
Yes.
And changing is a very difficult task. It takes a huge toll on you.
Yes, sir.
So, and it's always better to choose a partner whom you love.
Yes.
Like that.
Certainly,
Okay, so
sir.
that analogy works.
Certainly, sir. Certainly.
Okay. So, now you mentioned about philosophy being like interest area. That is correct. You also mentioned about clarity. So, what do you think you did which helped you? Because this was your first mains.
Right, sir.
Okay, and you got what, 276,
276,
which is a very good score if you see that way. So, how do you think in first mains, and that too you are not having any humanities background.
Yes.
You are an engineer.
Yes.
So, how do you think you could do it? Yes, first thing is interest. Agreed. But what after interest? Like briefly, if you can tell me, how did you reach there?
Sir, so the interest part will help you study it. But to get the marks that you want, you have to think rationally about it. So the first thing that you need to do is you have to, what I did was understood the syllabus. The syllabus is very well defined, and if they give a thinker, they will tell you what part of that thinker's philosophy is important. So we have to study with focus on those parts especially. That is point number one. Secondly, sir, I would like to put emphasis on the importance of short notes, which are very important, because this is a subject where you'll have to revise. And when you revise philosophy again and again, newer perspectives come out, because it is very difficult to understand the philosophy of somebody in the first reading itself. It never happens. So, and the third is the role of mentors, teachers who can explain to you with greater clarity, give you better understanding. Once if you have that, then it's all about your practice, how you write the answers, and I think it should work for everybody.
Even somebody like Mahatma Gandhi had said that, every time I read Bhagavad Gita,
yes,
I get some new meaning.
Yes, sir.
So the beauty of any philosophical stuff, philosophical material is always like this.
Yes.
Only thing is, your basic understanding should be clear,
Yes.
which you mentioned. If some mentor is there, that process becomes faster and smoother.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, later on, it's all your thing. You have to practice it, you have to revise it, and the notes, things and all.
Yes.
Now, with respect to notes, certainly there are notes and it helps. In market also notes are available.
Yes.
And it helps, I know, because I also prepared and you also know.
Yes.
But how important is to have your own notes in philosophy?
Sir, the importance of our own notes is greater, because the thing is that if I write something, I transcribe something down, when I will read it, it will give me a better understanding. And once you write something, it kind of develops that pictographic memory. So for example, in socio-political philosophy, in the paper, I remembered my own notes and I have this picture in my head, I have written something this on the right side of the paper. So that really helps. And these short points, when you keep revising them again and again, you can take them to your exam center. So those short notes are immensely beneficial. And I think to have faster revisions, to develop greater understanding, definitely short notes. One should prepare their own short notes.
Okay, for that revision is required.
Yes.
For that rewriting is required.
Yes.
There is one interesting thing which is most talked about this optional called philosophy, and I would like to know your opinion about it. Is that it is very short? Is it really the case?
Sir, in terms of amount of words on papers, if we judge by that aspect, it will be short. But what one tends to overlook is the fact that if it is a shorter optional, it is much more a deeper optional. And that aspect is sometimes overlooked. So the syllabus in terms of quantity might be less, but you will have to put in greater amount of time to understand the concepts, because the questions will be on the more tougher side comparatively. But once somebody develops that understanding, then I don't think there should be any difficulty in tackling those questions or answering them for that matter.
So you mean to say, if you have proper understanding, be it yourself, be it from some mentor or something, but proper clarity,
yes,
then it becomes short
yes,
optional.
Yes.
But if you do not have proper understanding, if you keep on doing trial and error, at your, you're not having much interest and maybe, spending a lot of time and not able to get that clarity.
Yes.
Then it is not as short as it is.
Right.
But why this short shortness of the syllabus is being talked about is basically between June and September, you really have very less time.
Right, sir.
It's a very cramped thing. And when it comes to selection, that 3 months is perhaps the most crucial part of your preparation.
Definitely.
You might have prepared 2 years prior to that, 3 years prior to it. It helps, but it's not directly having any bearing on it. In that 3 months, you are saying, that's what I am assuming, if you are prepared prior philosophy properly with clarity, that 3 months you can save a lot of time and use it for other aspects of your examination.
Definitely.
So, coming to this aspect, now there is another thing that philosophy helps in ethics, philosophy helps in essay, philosophy helps in interview.
Yes.
Now, is it also true? Let's,
Sir, I can speak from personal experience that it is immensely beneficial.
Okay.
For example, the essay. There are aspirants that are these days talking about these topics being very philosophical in nature. So you as a philosophy student will not feel that brunt.
Yes.
You will be in a much comfortable position. And obviously we are studying other subjects, GS, VS. So you can sort of mix it with your philosophy knowledge and present it in a way which is very concise and very apt to the topic.
Okay, you are mentioning not just about ethics and essay. You are also talking about this interview. Interview we'll talk about later because you got very good score in interview also. But you're also mentioning that there is link between GS 1 to 3 with philosophy.
Yes.
Can you little bit elaborate on
Yes,
this?
sir, definitely. Because the thing is that some people believe that philosophy will help in ethics and essay, but it goes the other way as well. Sometimes your GS can help you in philosophy because if you see the GS 1 syllabus, the art and culture also is a very important part of Indian schools of philosophy. And these questions are very well repeated and asked again and again. Also in GS2, we will study polity. There will be ideas of liberty, justice, equality, the preamble. And these are the questions that are being asked as it is in our socio-political philosophy paper 2.
Okay.
So you can gain knowledge not just from GS, but use the philosophy knowledge in GS and the other way around, vice versa as well. So it is a very flexible option in that manner and quite beneficial if you use that knowledge in the right place.
Okay. Now let's talk about the interview thing because I also interview you in one of the practice interviews.
Yes, sir. I had.
And I know you as your personality. I could judge your personality, but now I would like others or students also to know in what way you think it helped you in interview because you are a student of philosophy and you have an interest in philosophy.
Sir, firstly, just talking about philosophy itself, because it's such a unique optional that you can expect some questions in your interview from philosophy. For example, in my real interview in the UPSC, it so happened that from the chairman to all the 5 members, at least every member asked me 2 to 3 questions on philosophy. And that question was also asked to me in the interview, do you think philosophy should be mandatory to all the administrators? So I had given that answer because we had studied this in socio-political philosophy, philosophy of religion. There will be questions on diverse topics and you will be very well equipped to answer those questions. So it helps immensely in interview just by the nature of the optional being philosophy. Secondly, because philosophy requires that depth of knowledge and that clarity, because clarity is so important, that will reflect in your overall understanding over other subjects as well. And that will help you convey your answers better and place your points in terms of priority also better. So it helps to create a good impression overall, and that certainly helps.
Now you mentioned about, which is my experience also in my interview. But again, I would like you to talk something about this. Why do you think the senior panelists, mostly retired bureaucrats, civil servants, why do you think they have so much of interest? Why do you think they get triggered by the word philosophy positively and they are compelled to ask the questions? Do you like to throw some light on that? Like, why do you think that happened?
Sir, because the sheer number of students that come from philosophy option, around 300 people that get qualified. But if you look at other options, there are 1,000+ people.
Yes.
So sometimes people make this decision based on how much marks they're getting or what is the success ratio, etc. But when somebody comes with philosophy, generally, more than likely it is that person has taken it out of passion.
Yes.
And that sort of, I think, impresses them and they are keen to ask the questions on philosophy. That is one reason I think why they are so surprised by philosophy.
Right. And perhaps the very nature of the philosophy, it is very much in sync with, generally we use this word called wisdom.
Wisdom, yes.
So much talked about in philosophy. Yes. and people sitting on the other side of the panel, they have immense wisdom in what they are doing.
Definitely.
So perhaps they identify themselves with the philosophers sitting there, because they might have seen, they might have read, and obviously all of them, almost all of them, because I also have experience, and I have later on talked to them also personally when I was in service. They naturally have immense interest in philosophical concepts, technical concepts.
Sir, also one thing I would like to add is that when somebody asks you a philosophical question, it is a straight away direction into your brain, how you think. Because those questions will be very deep. They will be on life, death, God. And what you answer will totally reflect your personality. And that's why I think my interview was around 20 minutes only. Some people have their interview for 40 minutes. But the questions were such that I had to really think and answer, and that sort of reflects your personality. And it's a personality test. So I think that also really helps.
So in the 20 minutes is enough for a student of philosophy to make positive impression and say Tata bye bye. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And you mentioned about soul, God and religion and all. But there is another aspect also that you mentioned in your earlier answer, that is socio-political.
Yes.
We talk about justice, we talk about equality. But when you question, what is this justice? Philosophy starts. And that also interests them. Why I'm saying from my experience, because in many of the mock interviews also, I have sat beside the senior officers.
Right, yes, sir.
So I have talked to them in person also, like, in what way you ask questions.
Yes.
Senior as in retired.
Yes.
Like that. Okay. There is another, this I also consider misconception, but I think if you put your thought on it, would be better, that philosophy is a very small syllabus and there is very fixed syllabus, which to some extent okay, but you just wrote it by heart it, and you'll get 300 plus. Do you think it is real?
Sir, I don't think it is real. It is very difficult to do that. But the thing is that rote learning you'll make superficial answers, and the nature of the questions is such that to identify what the question is hinting towards, which part of the syllabus, presupposes that you have a very good conceptual clarity. And when that conceptual clarity comes with practice, you will be able to write good answers. And then, sir, sky's the limit. 300 plus. People are getting 300 plus.
People are getting last year also.
It's a very scoring option, sir. Contrary to what people have been saying, very scoring option.
Only thing is you need to have at least some appreciation, some inclination.
Definitely. Yes.
And is there any way, because see, many students comes to me, they have very initial attraction, I would say, not even inclination, to philosophy. They like to know, but then perhaps they lack the guidance, or they don't think, they start reading, like for example, they start with Datta Chatterjee, they start with Why Masi, the books.
Yes.
And then suddenly they call back, sir, it find very difficult. So I generally tell them, okay, you start any optional, which is not your background. First 2 months, it will be difficult. Even if you have interest, it is difficult, because interest is one thing. Okay. So what would you say to them who have just thought of going for philosophy, or thinking for philosophy, or just started philosophy, started reading, and they started finding that, it's very difficult words are there, transcendental, different esoteric words are coming. And every time they have to go back to the dictionary.
Yes.
So, and they call me. So I talk to them in whatever way I can, but I think it would be better if you say something about it.
So you have mentioned already the role of mentors and teachers, that they will make it much clearer. But I think we living in such a generation where we have the internet. And whenever I had a doubt personally, I used to go on YouTube. There are a plethora of resources, and they will explain to you using graphics, animations, and there will be much more simpler explanations. Directly going into books without getting the feel of the subject first, it will feel like a task. I think philosophy, if you're taking the subject, try to look at it as an opportunity. What you could not study in your normal job, you will have the time here to study and score marks and get your desired service. So I think first trying to get a feel of the subject by taking small steps initially, understanding the basic terminologies, what is metaphysics, epistemology, all these things, factors. First, these groundwork has been done. Then one can sort of take a bigger step and look at the details of the syllabus and such. I think that will help.
Another misconception, which is actually not predominant in those who study philosophy, but perhaps those who are away from philosophy, outsiders, that these philosophy people, they only study about God and soul. And pata nahi what all those things that doesn't exist, they'll talk about. Okay, what would you? I'm talking about as from the point of view of our syllabus, not just philosophy as a ocean. So, would you really only focus upon those things you talk about, or waste your time in a way on the thing that doesn't exist, or do you really do some real stuff?
Sir, the thing is that it is not the stuff as such, it is the questioning that we are doing. Because even if somebody says that there is God or soul, somebody says doesn't, both do not have proofs for either of them.
Yes.
So it is quite illogical to make claims. Our job is to study the philosophy. Our job is to understand the concepts and think for ourselves what could be or what could not be. So I think, and simply restricting philosophy to just God and soul is also not completely true in terms of syllabus as well.
Yeah.
It is philosophy of religion, metaphysics, experiences. It is about socio-political philosophy, linguistics, categorical imperatives, morality, ethics. I mean, the list keeps going on. So God and soul is oversimplifying it. It is not so. It is a very well elaborate syllabus and covers a very broad spectrum of very interesting things that people would like to study.
Correct. Now, another thing, how do you think for an administrator, your personal opinion, obviously,
yes, sir.
Because I have my personal opinion, how do you think for an administrator, it is better to have the philosophical inclination to be a efficient administrator?
Sir, firstly, with philosophy, the clarity, the understanding of concepts is very important. And for example, any government initiative, any scheme, the first few pages are always justifying the ideological backing behind why this is being done.
Yes.
And once, if you are an administrator, you have that philosophical bent of mind, you have that clarity, you understand why you are doing the work that you are doing. I think, sir, in my opinion, that will be a much better service, public service delivery from the administrator's side compared to a person who is just doing it because it is his job. Somebody who feels it, understands it, I think would be a much better administrator in terms of philosophical ideas. So I think that is one aspect. And sir, obviously the other aspects of philosophy, like we mentioned, ethics, morality, accountability, why to be moral, why to be ethical. So these are quite, give some clarity to that person and he'll be able to work better. So I think that is one aspect where.
So what I could sense coming from your overall expression is this questioning, this asking why,
yes,
this critical thinking is perhaps the USP of any philosopher.
Right.
The one who could ask right questions is a philosopher.
Yes, sir.
Now, yes, another thing. Now let's talk about from the little other side of the philosophy as an optional, because we perhaps have been talking about philosophy as these positives. What are the precautions? I would not call it negative because there is no negative of any optional, but precautions, something challenging. So what are those precautions that one need to take, or what are the challenges that you may face if you go for philosophy as optional?
Sir, the first challenge that I think one would face is that the resources on philosophy, I mean, people do PhDs on a single philosopher and certain aspects of philosophy. So there is no end to that. There has to be some rationality to where you will restrict your syllabus. That is one. Secondly, the resources, getting the resources and the things that you need to revise again and again. That can be a challenge, but it is not that much of a challenge if you have access to the internet or some mentors or teachers that can help you in that path. That is one. And so thirdly, I think we have to be aware of the fact that this is also an exam. And getting too involved in the concepts that we really enjoy and spending too much time on your optional can be harmful in certain ways. You have to divide our time well, because the nature of philosophy, it is so interesting. One tends to study and go into depth quite a lot. So I think if you have that timetable, you have that seriousness where you can delegate time to different subjects, it should not be a problem.
With respect to this interest taking away your time, I have seen happening with many of my friends. For many other options, many of my friends who study sociology, they have done PhD. Somehow they could not crack mains or whatever reasons, they could not get good marks, but they are PhD and they are actually very good in sociology. It happens with anything that makes you interested. But one interesting thing that you mentioned about philosophy is it is especially Indian philosophy, because in philosophy, India is already ahead.
Yes, sir, definitely.
Other aspects, maybe sociology, anthropology, Indian thinkers might not be as at par with Western thinkers. I don't know much, but whatever image I get. But philosophy, Indian philosophy is a very strong thing. So there is a chance that you get into the you cross the limit of philosophy to spiritual practices, then perhaps religious one, and then you lose the track.
Yes.
And yes, philosophy and philosophy as optional. This much you should always keep in mind.
That distinction is true. Yes.
And that is applicable to all other options.
Yes,
and rather than that, all GS 1 to 3 also.
Yes.
It's not just you keep on studying geography because you like it, or history for that matter.
Yes.
Because you want that marks.
Marks is important. Yes.
That is the most important thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, with respect to philosophy, people hear these words: Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. Now, Plato's own resources are so many books in itself. Then Aristotle wrote so many books. Even in Indian philosophy, Advaita and Vedantic literature is like a huge thing.
Yes, sir.
How would a philosophy optional student for UPSC study so much? How can you study 1,000 books?
Sir, it is not possible to study this 1,000 books. We have to rely on material that is being provided here in the market or some institution that provides material. Other than that, the material must be huge, but sometimes the core concepts are very simple. And using those core concepts, they build their theory more complex. So once we understand the core philosophy, for example, we understand Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, if we understand, then it is quite evident that anything that they ask about the Jagat will obviously be some kind of Maya. So once you understand the core philosophy, you can build your answer, and that's how you will develop that understanding. So I think sticking to smaller resources, concise to the point resources, revising them multiple times, and practicing answer writing, that is sufficient for this exam. We do not need to go into these cannons of resources. That is not possible also.
Even on a lighter note, I can say even UPSC has not gone to that extent.
Yes.
Plato, theory of forms, that's all. They are not asked anything else.
Yes, because the syllabus is also very well defined. So,
with respect to Plato, most of the questions are only around theory of forms.
Yes.
And at the max, allegory of cave.
Yes.
Nothing else they ask. Even with respect to Shankaracharya, the concepts of Atman, then
Jiva,
Adhyasa, Jeev, Jagat, and Brahm. And Maya. Otherwise, Shankaracharya philosophy is a huge thing. People do not just PhD. 3 lifetime PhD people do. Like, one person does PhD, lives in between, then another person, the cult kind of thing.
Right.
So that much we are not required.
So because also this philosophy has been building over thousands of years. So it's not possible that everybody can know everything about that.
Yes. Now, simple question. Who can opt for philosophy as optional? Like who as in background wise? Who can opt for?
Sir, irrespective of background, anybody who has that philosophical bent of mind, the inclination and the ability or the interest to question things is fit for philosophy in my opinion. Anybody who likes to delve on the aspects of life, what is his purpose, and has a desire to learn and to know more about these subjects is fit for philosophy and can surely go for it, in my opinion.
Okay, so you are saying, as you already mentioned in the previous answers also, the interest, inclination, and obviously your resolve to put efforts. Because when it comes to optional and marks, resolve has to be there. That you have to do the revision 10-15 times, do the self notes and everything.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
But anybody else who has interest can come.
Can go for philosophy.
Yes. Now, with respect to philosophy, briefly, let's not dwell much into it. Answer writing. Like many students also ask me, like, studying, understanding is still okay, sir, but when writing answer, it becomes difficult. So I know it's very difficult to give general guidelines for all the answers, but briefly, what would you talk about? Maybe GS 1 answer and GS 2 philosophy 1 answer and philosophy 2 answers. Answer writing tips.
Answer writing.
Very brief.
Sir, for philosophy paper 1, the syllabus is very well defined and the questions will come from the syllabus only. So no matter how abstract that question looks, they are asking that core syllabus point in that which is given. So I think your short notes, like we mentioned, those should have a small paragraph where all the idea of that philosopher is completely given in one short note. And that short note should be reflected in your answer. If the examiner finds that in your answer, he will give you marks. That is for sure. But other than that, if we look at the question and get confused as to what part of the syllabus that they are referring to, then I think we will sort of lose track and that answer will not be concise and to the point. So that is for paper 1. For paper 2, sir, I think it is to have a kind of general approach. Socio-political philosophy especially, one needs to have that GS2 bent of mind here. That's so that what we have learned from GS2 should be applied here. The court cases, the examples, NGOs, civil societies, whatever we mentioned, it is a quite liberal paper, and there is a big scope for writing innovative points. So it is not sticking just to philosophy, but that philosophical core ideas should be reflected, because at the end, it is still a philosophy paper. And philosophy of religion, again, sir, like paper 1, it is quite concise. And since we come from India, which is a very religious place,
home of religion of all the kinds of religion that are existing in the world,
there will be no dearth of material or examples from personal experience and from notes as well. So I think, yes.
Now we talked about how philosophy helped you in ethics, essay, everything. Even you mentioned GS interview. Now my question would be, since you started your preparation, do you think studying philosophy so deeply also helped you in your personality, in whatever way, if at all it has helped?
Sir, certainly in my personality, the ability to study, sir, for example, when we study philosophy, once I read Aristotle, I agree with him. But then I read Descartes, and then I agree with Descartes also. And this happens with every philosopher. That sort of helps to break down the biases and the conformities that we sometimes develop. And once you're done with philosophy, you kind of understand that we cannot agree with any philosopher. We have to look at everybody's ideas and have to make our own ideas. And that gives a certain sense of originality to my personality. I have seen this. And the clarity and the ability to put complex ideas in simple words, that sometimes gets the point across very well and is rewarded also in UPSC. So I think that is how it helps.
And these 2 points that you mentioned about, having balanced opinion, ability to listen to the other side also.
Yes, sir.
Is perhaps the most crucial for an administrator.
Definitely.
Just imagine you sitting there and because impartiality is perhaps one of the most core values of an administrator, because you'll be sitting in the position where you can actually decide the future of any of the sides.
Certainly, sir. Yes.
Okay, very good. Interesting point. Now, another different type of question. Which is your most favorite philosopher?
Sir, my favorite philosopher has always been Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya.
Okay.
So that is because...
let us also listen a little bit about why and how, briefly.
Yes.
Why Shankaracharya? Why Advait?
Sir, because like I mentioned, we read one philosopher, we listen to his successor, and then we find that, okay, he has some flaws in his philosophy. When I read Shankaracharya's philosophy, it was one of the first times perhaps where I felt like the defense arguments were quite sophisticated and were defendable to that extent. And that sort of led me to believe that this is a very sophisticated philosophy, very well made, and the arguments given in its defense are also very convincing, and that resonated with me. And also that fact that in my home also, Ramana Maharishi is a very respected saint, and people at home practice meditation. So that has always been very close to me. So some personal inclination and the sophisticated nature of philosophy, that is why I really like that philosophy.
Okay, you mentioned about meditation. I would like to ask you, if you're doing regular meditation, will it help you to bring clarity in the topics of philosophy? Because, especially Indian philosophy, because it talks about consciousness, different levels, mind, body, different levels of your mental states. Consciousness is different from mind. So, I'm asking because I know the answer, but I would like you to talk to the students in that way. If you're a regular meditation practitioner in whichever technique, technique is not important. Will it help you to understand the terms that you listened in the class philosophy optional or read in the books?
Sir, certainly with certain philosophies like yoga philosophy, for example, the dharana, the dhyan, these aspects
you can see
firsthand. And I don't think this is possible in any other optional where you can firsthand experience something that you've been reading. And if you're lucky, then maybe samadhi as well.
Samadhi, then you perhaps will not be
in UPSC. So,
and even Buddhism philosophy.
Yes, sir.
Buddha also talks about meditation, and even this. Yes, you want to say something? Yes.
Sir, even Husserl's phenomenalism.
Yes.
That bracketing aspect, that can be done mentally, and that is.
See, bracketing is nothing but bracketing is just theorized form of what meditative practice Patanjali talks.
Exactly, sir. Yes.
Now, I was coming to it because see, if you understand Indian philosophy thoroughly. Any other philosophy you can understand in the world.
And there are so many convergences, like Berkeley's philosophy with Vedanta, And these things are quite interesting to see because they are apart from continents, but philosophical ideas sometimes still match. So that's very interesting.
Even Kant's philosophy, his nomina, is very close to this Paramarthik and Vyavaharik of Shankaracharya.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
But see, this is the interesting thing, because now you started talking about it and we started getting into a little more deeper, but then that's because that's our weak point, because now we started talking philosophy. It's so interesting that we start talking about, and you have been studying, I have been studying and teaching both.
Sir.
But when this clicks, I can guarantee you something like that the day when it clicked to me that, okay, what Kant is saying and what Shankaracharya is saying is same.
Yes.
The whole day you will be at the happy mood.
Yes,
I don't know from where it comes.
Yes.
That is the best part of the philosophy.
Yes,
the only thing is that happiness only should come from the syllabus points. Otherwise, then there are many points of connections. Then you will get carried
Sir,
away.
and it is very rare to have intellectual satisfaction.
But it's very, very satisfying.
Very satisfying.
Because it doesn't need anything. You don't need dopamine for that. It just happens.
Yes.
Okay. So now coming to the last part of our interview or interaction, whatever you want to call. Briefly, what would you advise to students? As in those who are on fence, those who are thinking for philosophy. We are basically talking about philosophy. So, what would you suggest to them? What should they go for to decide whether I'm in for philosophy or not for philosophy?
So again, like if somewhere down you feel that these subjects in philosophy, for example, the ideas, the deeper aspects of life are something that you're even concerned with, and you have this tendency to sit down sometimes and think about the broader aspects of life, I think it is a very good option for you. You will have the opportunity to learn these things in depth, pursue them, and at the end of the day, the important aspect of getting marks, because it is also a scoring optional, contrary to the beliefs that I want to clear out. So just if in your heart there is love for philosophy, love for wisdom, you should go for it. Be courageous. I mean, there is no big myth around philosophy that it is very abstract or esoteric and obscure that only certain people can understand. It is nothing like that. I have no philosophical background. I am an engineer by degree, and so if I can do it, then I think anybody else with that inclination can definitely succeed. So that is my message.
Thank you very much, Archit.
Thank you so much, sir,
for your time, valuable time, and I'm hoping next time again we'll be sitting.
Yes, sir.
That time your rank would be.
I hope so, sir.
Much better, but still, anyway, with this rank, most likely with all the calculations, you will be getting into your second choice, that is IPS, and I'm hoping, I would like to say very, very all the best for your future endeavor.
Yes, sir.
And let's keep our association on.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bye.